Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is going to be a little bit of a lengthy one. It's another sculpting video. So I'm going to go through the process of how I sculpted the white tiger head. That is the one with the movable jaw. As you can see here, what it looks like before I put the complete doll together. It has a lot of work went into this, a lot of time and sculpting went into it, and a lot of detail. But I think it really paid off, and yeah, so if you want to see how I sculpted the white tiger head, then strap yourself in and get prepared for a lengthy video. But the white tiger has been snapped up by a patron, but I do have the orange tiger available in my shop. Payment plans are also welcome, and just shoot me a message on my shop and we can organize something. I'm super flexible if that's what you needed. So anyway, strap yourself in. Alrighty, so for this tiger sculpt, I have already sculpted that orange tiger head. That's the one without the movable jaw, as you can see here, the one with the green eyes. I'm just using that for my reference, as well as using reference images over on my computer next to me from all different angles of the face, so I can get all of the dimensions right. So I'm just using the orange tiger to roughly map out the shape of the lower jaw. So I'm going to be sculpting the lower jaw first and then sculpting the top of the jaw and joining them together. If you want to know how I did the joint for my movable jaws, I have a tutorial in my shop at creaturesandnat.com, and I go through the basic process of what I do for movable jaws. The demo is on a shoe bill, but it's pretty much the same concept for any movable jaw that I do. So basically, I mapped out the lower jaw sculpt from that first tiger. Then I quickly baked it in the oven just to set a rough jaw shape, and then I can start working on something with a solid base and improving the sculpt. So what I'm doing is I'm using Sculpey Original. That is the white Sculpey that you can see that I'm using. The beige coloured Sculpey is called Super Sculpey, and it works really well for fleshy tones or beigey fleshy tones. And I think it works really nicely for gums and little nose fleshy bits that you can see. So I'm basically doing like a gum line with that Super Sculpey and then roughing out a lip shape with that Sculpey Original, and then I can start building inside of that lower jaw. So for the teeth, I use Sculpey Translucent. I think it works really nicely for teeth. It has a nice sort of transparent look to it with a really nice like a bony color, I guess, or tooth color. So I use this type of Sculpey for all of my mouth sculpts that I do. And basically what I'm doing is I'm roughing out the shape of where I want these teeth to be. I looked at quite a lot of reference images to make sure I get the teeth positioning right on tigers, because sometimes you can really mess up the way they look if you don't get the teeth position right, especially if you're doing a tiger with an opened jaw. So once I'm happy with where the teeth positioning is, I can start working on all of those gum details. So I'm just going in with my Super Sculpey to create that little bit more of a gum line where the smaller teeth are going to sit. And I just did like a small little rectangular shape and slowly blending it into that bottom of the jaw. So once I'm happy with the way the gum is sitting, I can start working on the smaller teeth. And basically what I do, there's heaps of different methods to do it, but I find the quickest way is to do a rectangle shape for the teeth and then start sculpting all the little details in once you've added it to the jaw. So I'm just using a little tool here that's kind of a point to it, but it's like a soft point, and I'm just basically I'm sculpting in all those little teeth details that you can see here. So yeah, just spend a little time just messing around with the teeth and sort of pushing it into a rough tooth shape. So what I'm working on now is the tongue. Same deal with the Super Sculpey, because tongues are like a transparency beige pink color. I use that Super Sculpey to create the tongue, and I basically do a rough shape of the tongue and then drape it over the sculpture that I have. Everything has been baked so far, so it is nice and set, and then I can start working on those details like the tongue, and then also placing in the other teeth that you can see. Not that you can see very much of it, but I wanted to get the sculpture to be perfectly right. So I added these little teeth, all these little sharp little teeth at the back. Again, using that translucent Sculpey and just placing it underneath the tongue and having the tongue sort of rest on top of those teeth. Again, going in with my pointy tools and creating all those little indentations that you can see on teeth. Again, I googled a lot of images of tiger teeth to make sure I got those details right. So once I'm happy with the way everything's looking, I then add a little bit of detail to the tongue. So tigers have, like every cat, has like a weird looking tongue, so I added those details in with my needle tool. So once that's done, I can bake it and then start working on the rest of the doll. So same deal as all my other sculpts that I do. I use a aluminium foil ball for the armature underneath, and I do that for a couple of reasons. One is when you're baking Sculpey or any polymer clay, you don't want it to be too thick because the temperature can't get into the middle of the clay and really bake it and cure it. So the thinner it is, the easier it is to cure, and faster it is to cure as well in your oven. And again, weight as well. So when you're making a art doll, you don't want it to be too heavy because the armature might not be able to support the doll. So having that aluminium foil ball core makes it a lot lighter than using a solid piece. So now I'm working on the underside of the top of the jaw, and I'm really using my lower jaw as a reference point for a lot throughout this rest of the process, making sure that it does fit and it aligns properly. So I'm adding in the gum line for the front of the teeth, and again using my bottom jaw to make sure I've got the proportions right, and then just carving out all of the sections that need to be reduced. Once I'm happy with the way that's sitting, I can then add the teeth. Again, going in with my translucent Sculpey and adding a teeth line, the same deal as what I did with the bottom of the teeth, just adding in a line and then just sort of carving it out to make sure I have the right proportions. Once I've got that proportion and checked on my lower jaw, I can then start adding all the little details to those teeth. The teeth at the top are a little bit different than the bottom, so the tooth on either side need to be slightly bigger than the ones in the middle. So I spent a bit of time just carving out those details to make sure I've got those proportions right as well. And once again, making sure everything is sitting proportionately and looking correct. For the canines, what I do is roll out a snake and sort of roll out the ends to have a little bit of a point to it, and then I can get my little cutting tool, and I find if you roll while you cut, it cuts it in a circle, in a nice uniform circle, rather than leaving a flat spot. So that's a nice little handy tip when you're cutting something round. And so I'm sort of placing it on the jaw in a rough shape that I think it will sit, always going back and checking to see how the jaw is going to align and making sure there's enough space for the lower canines to fit next to the top of the canines. So once I'm happy with that, I can start working on the gums. So again, getting my Super Sculpey out and this just creating a gum line with the Sculpey just by going around the tooth and blending it into the rest of the sculpture. Again, going back and checking that everything is looking okay, and then starting to add little bits to see how the little mouth parts sit on top of that detail, making sure that it's going to look proportionate and not too out of whack. So once I'm happy with that, I can start working on more of the detailing. So I'm adding in a little gum line to the sides of the mouth, and this will act as the gum line where the teeth sit behind and gives it more of a little finished product. So now I'm going to be adding the little detailing that you can see on the roof of cats' mouths. So I'm adding a thin piece of Super Sculpey to the roof of the mouth and just sort of blending it into the corners, making sure it is nice and smooth. And then I can go in with my ball tool and start adding those little details onto the roof of the mouth. I thought this technique worked really well. You just have to sort of pat it down a little bit and make sure that the edges aren't too sharp, that they're more blended in. But once you've got the basic pattern out, you can start going in and blending it in a bit more, adding some little details like little bits of gum to the roof line, and it really brings it to life. So once that bit's done, I can then start adding the rest of the teeth. So I just added little shapes to begin with of the teeth, and then I can go in again with the needle tools and other tools to start creating those teeth and the teeth shape. Always checking again that the bottom jaw is going to fit and is symmetrical. So once I'm happy with that, I can start adding all the lip area and the snout area and start actually sculpting in the rest of the doll. So at this stage, I've baked everything that I've sculpted so far. So all of the jaws and the teeth and the gums are all baked and set. So I can start sculpting the rest of the doll and nothing will move around. So I'm just going over with a sort of a sculpey flap over the sides of the jaw, again taking my reference of the lower jaw to make sure that it fits properly, and then I can start refining all of the edges and where the lips sit to make sure that it is looking like a tiger. So once I'm happy with the rough shape of it, I can start actually adding a little bit of detailing to the snout area and start working on the nose. So I have my tiger next to me to make sure I've got the reference kind of right. I wanted to make the white tiger a little bit different to the orange tiger, because white tigers are so inbred that they tend to look a little bit different than a wild tiger. So I wanted to make the nose a little bit different to what the orange tiger looks like. So I've basically roughed out a shape of the nose snout area, and then I can start working on the little actual pink nose that you can see here. So pulling out my Super Sculpey, I can start sort of carving out a rough nose shape and then put it on to the nose area and start sculpting all of the details to basically bring it to life. So I want to start adding some more detailing to the top of the nose and start actually sculpting more details and the final details, I should say, for this sculpt. And I will sort of go back and forth in between with adding some little bits and pieces here to start building areas up that I think might need to be built up a little bit or subtracted a little bit. And I'll just end up doing that throughout the whole process and spending a bit of time on symmetry. So moving on to the eyes, I like to create a little well of, I guess, eye socket out of some Sculpey. And like I said, it'll act like the eye socket, and then I can place in those cabochons that I use for glass eyes and make sure they're in the correct place, the correct positioning, and they're not too far apart or too close together. And then I can start working on the detailings of the eyelids. So for the eyelids, I use a basic kind of worm to create those eyelids, and then start building on the brows and blending in all of those areas. I like to add a little bit of fur detailing to the eye area first. I think it sort of brings the sculpture to life a bit more and sort of blends it in a bit more, so you can really start to see what the animal will look like when you start adding all these little details. So I go in with my needle tool and start adding those first little bits of fur detail. You don't have to do this. I like to do this because I feel that it sort of finishes the sculpture a bit better, and you can see what it actually looks like, and it gives it sort of a personality, and you can really sort of connect with it. So once I'm happy with the way the eyes are sitting, I can start adding that final bit of detail, which is basically some muscle tone, the little bump to the head that you can see tigers have. So adding some bulk to the top of the head to make it not look so flat. Also going in and adding those brow lines to all of the eye area to really build up those brows. So that's pretty much it for the sculpting of the head. I go ahead and just check that everything is lining up and is symmetrical before I do the final bake. But stay tuned for the video of the actual making of the tiger. That'll come next week. If you want to know how I made the jaw, like I said, the movable jaw tutorial is in my shop, and I'll have a video on this jaw going up on my Patreon. And thanks to my patrons for supporting me. I really appreciate it. I have new things coming out, including that new video and also some early access to that dragon collection that is almost finished. You can check me out on Instagram and Facebook as well at Creatures of Nat, and my shop creaturesofnat.com. And don't forget to like, subscribe, all that stuff really helps my channel. And I'll catch you in the next one. Bye.